Well, low on food and fuel, the Ghost crew agrees to steal an Imperial weapons shipment for crime lord Sicatro Vizago. That guy's back. During the mission, they encounter a familiar droid duo and find that the weapons in question are more deadly than they'd realized. It's time to revisit Star Wars Rebels Season 1, Episode 3, Droids in Distress.
This is Master Obi-Wan Kenobi. I regret to report that both our Jedi Order and the Republic have fallen, with the dark shadow of the Empire rising to take their place. This message is a warning and a reminder for any surviving Jedi. Trust in the Force. Do not return to the Temple. That time has passed, and our future is uncertain. We will each be challenged. Our trust, our faith, our friendships. But we must persevere, and in time, a new hope will emerge. May the Force be with you, always.
Well, welcome back to Episode 3 of Star Wars Rebels Revisited as we drop the mic. Mic drop.
Well, Dad's foot is dragging the cord.
I guys should probably be careful. All right. Welcome to our
That must have sounded
crazy
very
life.
nice on the audio.
It sounded great. Yeah. So anyway, that's what makes this fun. Okay. So here we are. We're back. We're at Episode 3. We are fully into Season 1 now. We've set the stage, and we're going to talk about this episode that is sort of infamous as being one that people didn't like at first. Droids in Distress. You know, it felt off-putting. At least I remember it this way. Felt off-putting a little bit to have C-3PO and R2 show up in this series at this early on.
I mean, it would be fine if they showed up later, but it was way too early.
Yeah, I felt like it was just like they were trying too hard with it. But in the end, you know what? It was a fun episode when we watched it again. I actually liked it a lot better this time than I did when we originally watched it before. But let's get into it. Let me read the recap of this episode. The Ghost crew steals a shipment of destructor weapons from Minister Maketh Tua. She's blonde. It doesn't sound at all like I just said it. But anyway, to sell to Vizago, accidentally bringing the Imperially serviced droids C-3PO and R2-D2 with them in the process.
I know those guys.
Those guys have been around a little bit.
Just a little.
Yeah, Zeb objects to the mission. This is important. Since the same weapons were used to nearly wipe out his species, the Lasats. In fact, as far as he knows, at this point,
They're extinct.
they're extinct. He's the only one of them. Agent Kallus intercepts C-3PO's distress call. That guy's always making the wrong choices in these shows. And follows the Ghost to Lothal. Zeb sees that Agent Kallus uses a bow rifle, a weapon only used by the Lasat honor guard, which Kallus had taken from a guardsman he killed himself. In the ensuing duel between Zeb and Kallus, Ezra saves Zeb by using the Force for the first time to push Kallus away, allowing the crew to escape after setting the weapons to self-destruct as a diversion. Kanan returns the two droids to their rightful owner, Bail Organa, who survives. Yes.
Surveys R2-D2's according to the Rebel crew's action.
Yeah, thank you for taking over.
Nice save on my part.
Exactly. Well, you get what you get. You see what you get with us, right? Get what you see? I don't know.
You really haven't.
But this episode's not going so strong for me right now, so I'm going to turn it over to you, BBA. What did you like about, or what was your thoughts on this episode, Droids in Distress?
I found C-3PO to be more annoying than he usually is.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I feel like normally he's annoying, but like this one, he's just like over the top. Like he's dumb, but not this dumb. Like he's not usually giving up this crew to the Empire. Like he normally is like against the Empire and running away from these stormtroopers. They keep shooting them. If the stormtroopers are shooting you, what they were shooting close to them as they were trying to escape, but then he goes back to them to save. It just didn't make any sense for me for C-3PO.
And it's not like we don't love Anthony Daniels, who voiced him in this thing. I mean, Anthony Daniels
shook my hand.
BB Nate's hand. We got to sit on stage during Star Wars Celebration 2017 in Orlando, the 40 years of 3PO, and you can find the video all over YouTube. Just Google it, you'll see it. If you see an inflatable BB-8, inflatable Jabba the Hutt, yeah, and a Jedi, that's us on that. But yeah, the character seemed a little bit out of his element in this episode. Is that kind of what you got from it?
Yeah, I felt like it was weird.
They just kind of put them in there to have them in there.
That's
sort of what
But other than that, it was a good episode.
Well, again, in the droids, it's a little bit misleading with the title being droids in distress, because that's not really what this episode is about. This episode is about Kallus and it's about Zeb with it, and we're going to talk about that a lot more later on. But what did you think about that part of it, as far as the revelations about Kallus and what we learned about Zeb and all that?
I thought it was really good and interesting storyline for the episode. I really enjoyed the fact of the Zeb he's normally all in on the action and always wanting to do all these missions and always wanting to help out the Ghost Crew to survive, but this one he's like, I don't know if we should do that, and refusing to and not wanting to.
Yeah, he's a little taken back by the whole thing because of what he's suspecting about these ion blasters, disruptors, or whatever they are.
Disruptors.
And you can tell that Hera and Kanan are a little bit like curious and like weirded out. Like, he's normally into this kind of stuff, like wanting to help out and wanting to get these out of the Empire's hands, but
he's terrified of these disruptors.
Yeah, for good reason.
Yeah. What did you think about this episode, Sam?
Yeah, it's really important in regards to Kallus and Zeb's relationship later on. There's one episode where, much later on, I think it's still season 1, I'm not entirely sure, where Zeb and Kallus crash land on this ice planet, or this ice moon, and are stranded together, and they have to work together to be able to escape. And, you find out in this episode that Kallus gave the order to use these disruptor rifles to eliminate all the Lasats. And Zeb was there. He witnessed all this, so he knows their destructive capabilities, and he obviously, like you were saying, he doesn't like them. And now he learns that Kallus was the one who gave the order to use them. And then in a later episode in the series, they're stranded together and they have to work together. And Zeb puts aside those feelings to save Kallus. And Kallus is, like, really confused. I mean, he asks him, he's like, I destroyed your species and you're, like, helping me? Like, it was a really, really cool episode. And later on, like, I think season 3 or 4, Kallus and Zeb are, like, pretty good friends, actually.
Yeah, by the end of the series, for sure, they're very close.
So it's bizarre seeing this episode and the hate between each other, and then knowing where they end up later on.
Which is a theme of Star Wars, it is a redemption arc for Kallus with that, which, obviously the entire prequels and the original trilogy, episodes 1 through 6 of the movies, are a redemption arc. It's the fall and the redemption of Anakin Skywalker, according to George Lucas. And so redemption is a big part of the Star Wars psyche. We're going to talk about that in month 3 on our Galactic Themes of Star Wars. Is going to be about redemption. But Kallus is a redemption story through seasons 1 through 4. He's the leader of the bad guys when we start this series. He's been present in every one of these episodes. He's the guy hunting down the Ghost Crew. By the end, he's giving up everything in order to try to keep the rebellion alive with that. So it's going to be fun to watch him as we continue on down this series with that. I would say I loved that element of this episode, but I also loved seeing what happens at the very end when Ezra finally he doesn't think, he just reacts, and he reacts to save Zeb, who Zeb's not really a big fan of his so far in the series. He reacts and uses the Force to save Zeb from Kallus, and I think that that's like a key moment. It's not the pivotal moment of this episode. That'll be coming up in a little bit, but I love that part of it. So, so let's move on and let's talk about sort of our reaction. Okay, so now that we've kind of given our general opinion about the episode, what stood out to you as being like your favorite moments overall in this episode? We'll start with you, BB. What are your couple favorite moments?
Well, the first one was kind of Rex, the droid for the lack of a better term, the Star Tour ship.
Yeah, I mean it's totally patterned after Star Tours.
It is, and they even said that in Rebels Recon, and they said that in the list that they give us for each episode of the top things. And it was funny because that Rex was also patterned to feel like he is the Captain Rex.
Oh yeah.
And so that's what they patterned to try to pattern off of.
Funny.
Which explain who Captain Rex is for those people that may be a little unclear.
He's a big character, and he works with Anakin in Clone Wars, and he also works with Ahsoka and the Rebels, the Ghost Crew, in Rebels, and also a few other things. He's in Episode 6, Return of the Jedi, as well.
Yeah, he's one of Han Solo's crew for the Force Moon of Endor. In Return of the Jedi.
And they were the StarWars.com was talking about this, and they were like, yeah, at least this was smooth sailing, unlike the time that we went to Endor. As a joke of Star Tours, because it can be sometimes rough with those type of things.
Yeah, that's funny.
So I just found that to be a little funny.
Cool. So you love the Rex character from Star Tours and the whole Star Tours-esque transportation,
Public
from
transportation.
Lothal to whatever that planet was that they were on in that. So what else did you like about this?
I like the how like the rebels do not give up. They were even thinking there was these gigantic walkers that were coming to them, and there was only like a group of 5 of them trying to fend themselves off with a few ion disruptors. And they somehow do it, no matter if it's Hera's blaster or Kanan using his lightsaber to cut up the walker or Sabine blowing it up or something. They always find out a way to do it. It's insane how they just don't give up, and that's a very big thing about this Rebels in general. The rebellion and that type of stuff. They never give up, no matter what happens. And so
that's cool. What about you, Samuel? What do you think were some of your standout moments in this episode?
Yeah, I mean, I sort of talked about Zeb and Kanan and all, or Kanan. I always mix up Kanan with Kallus. Zeb and Kallus, but Kallus. I mean, we're really introduced to him in this episode. We saw him a little bit in the previous ones, but I mean, you realize how evil of a guy he is. I mean, and he's not just evil for evil's sake. I mean, he's a smart bad guy too,
and he loves being bad.
Right?
And he literally hates the Ghost Crew. He hates the rebels, and he wants to do everything to capture them. And so it's not sort of the cool and calm, collected Imperial officer that we see in some of the movies.
He's not strong.
No, not at all. He's all emotion and hatred.
Yeah, I mean, when he was telling Zeb that he gave the order to use the ion disruptors, he was giddy.
Yeah.
I mean, and laughing. It was. Ooh.
And as you see in the Spark of the Rebellion Part 2, at the end, the Stormtrooper got knocked down off of a platform, and he did as well. So they're climbing up this pole, and the Stormtrooper was like, "First time seeing your Jedi, Kallus?" And Kallus just kicks him off and...
Oh yeah, he just knocks him down.
Knocks him
he
down.
kills him.
That was an evil moment. That is evil's definition. It's insane how evil he is. That's why Kallus and Thrawn make such a good team. We have the balance of the smart, and then we have the balance of just the evilness.
There's logic, and then there's emotion. Yeah,
absolutely. For me, was there any other parts of it for you?
I mean, I mentioned the whole Zeb and Kallus. See, I got it right this time. And their eventual friendship. So that was really the cool part for me.
I loved the fact that there's this moment on the Star Tours transport when R2-D2 and C-3PO are asked to go to the back of the transport.
And sort of chopper.
It's really an interesting moment. When we were watching it in preparation for recording this, I kind of wondered if Story Group didn't insert that into the story to sort of begin to talk about maybe these droids need rights too, because droid rights has become a big issue, like a big storyline over the course of the last few years within the Star Wars, canon. It's a big part of Solo. L3 is like all about droid rights. It's in the Most Wanted novel. They're the droid Gatra that are fighting for droids' rights, and then it's going to be now that we have IG-88 and we have others from the droid Gatra that it looks like are going to be in The Mandalorian when that comes out in 2019. This droid rights concept is a big concept, but when we see this episode of Star Wars Rebels, there's this moment when droids are not welcome at the front of the bus.
Yeah.
It's sort of a Rosa Parks moment to some extent. They're being asked to move to the back, which I thought that was interesting. But then and that was just an aside. But when they get to the back, there's this other protocol droid that is totally patterned after the original protocol droid artwork for C-3PO that Ralph LaCouri did. Just like we talked about on the previous episode where Zeb was the original version of a Wookiee. Now in this third episode, we see the original version of C-3PO standing next to what we know as C-3PO. I thought that was absolutely awesome. And then we have to fast forward all the way to the very end of this episode when the droids, when C-3PO and R2 are returned to Bail Organa on the Tantive V4, which is like a really cool moment in that episode because you get Bail Organa and he's wanting to get more information that was recorded by R2-D2 about the Imperials, of course, but specifically about this group, this ghost crew. And that's going to become important later on because they're going to be given an invitation by the Rebel Alliance to be a part of the rebellion. These cells are going to come together, and Hera's going to become a general, and we're going to see all this. And it starts off here with Bail getting R2-D2 back on the Tantive V4.
And we'll actually see a little bit more of Ralph McQuarrie's art in the next episode. A kind of tiny Easter egg as well.
Is there? Well, I can't wait to find out about that because I don't even know what we're talking about. Right
You do.
I don't. I'm sitting here trying to remember it. Okay, that's
we'll
pretty
figure
cool.
it out.
That's awesome.
You, Lasat! Face me! Wait, Zeb! Only the honor guard of Lasat may carry a bow rifle. I know! I removed it from a guardsman myself! I was there when Lasat fell. I know why you fear those disruptors. I gave the order to use them.
Okay, so now we've already kind of talked about it a little bit, but the big moment again, the big revelation, we just saw the clip and just heard the clip if you're listening to this on the podcast, of the confrontation between Zeb and Kallus. And this is the first time we actually, we find out the real reason a little bit before this, when Ezra and Hera have this conversation in the cockpit of the Ghost, where Ezra finds out from Hera that Zeb's entire species was wiped out by these ion disruptors, that they're trying to steal in this episode, which is sort of, she basically says cut some slack to Zeb. I mean, he's dealing with a lot right now.
Yeah.
We have no idea how much he's getting ready to deal with until we find that confrontation that we just saw and listened to between Zeb and between Kallus. You talked a lot about that a minute ago. I'm going to ask you, BB Nate, what is your thoughts? Share with our viewers what your thoughts are on sort of what happens in this episode between Zeb and Kallus and how that plays forward going into the rest of the show.
It's a very weird, relationship with Kallus and Zeb. It starts out like this. They first off fully meet and person with Kallus having a bow staff and saying that he killed and ordered for the Lasat to be killed with ion disruptors. It's not a good start to the friendship. And then we see
This isn't a friendship at this point.
Not at this point. And it's hard for Zeb to figure this out. Zeb is not a friend person. When he gets introduced to somebody new, he normally wants them, like Ezra, he wants to kick them off, get them off, and stuff like that. And then, like you said, Sammy, they get onto that ice moon type of planet, and they have to survive together. And Kallus is just amazed by the friendship. And that is not Zeb. If you see, Kallus doesn't know that isn't Zeb, but when we see it, that's not Zeb at all. He's not a person that makes friends. It's especially with somebody who killed his species. It's hard for Zeb to do what he does later in the series, but right now in this episode, I think why he starts to get, he's a great combat. He does great in combat.
He's the warrior, of this group. And
Yes.
as we think
Oh,
about
for sure.
the mythology and sort of that, the Joseph Campbell archetypes and stuff like that we have on there, there's always a warrior in the group. You have the mentor in Kanan, you have the hero in Ezra, you have the heroine or the lady in the distress, which is sort of funny because that's not Hera at all, but it's also not Leia. But they sort of play that part in this. You have the jesters with the droids, so Chopper in this case. But the warrior, the Han Solo of this group, is Zeb. And Zeb's not about relationships. He's all about himself with this, which makes it, but you understand better why when you learn about what's happened in the past to the Lasat, this species.
He gets clunky and not right in his fighting. He's not doing well when he's fighting against Kallus.
Yeah.
He's slow, and Kallus is better than he normally is. The fact is Kallus has that power over him. I did this, and like you said, Sammy, he is super evil. So when he was super evil, he feels this extra thing of power, but Zeb has so much emotion coming over him, and so much rage against Kallus is not helping his combat.
He's not thinking,
And he was trained to be...
He's emotionally and physically knocked off balance by this revelation by Kallus that Kallus ordered the genocide of his species.
And he was trained to be a Lasat honor guard, which that, I'm assuming, has to take a lot with keeping your emotions down and fighting and going fast. But the fact is he doesn't know that he's not the only one left.
No, he thinks he's the only one in the species.
He does.
Yeah.
So, and it's just an insane moment through this. This series throws you into that moment quickly and just kind of how he is. You fill up with so much emotion. You feel so bad for him. And you understand his rage against Kallus. And it's just kind of a heart-wrenching moment for Zed.
Yeah, Sam, when you think about this sort of this Zeb Kallus element with that, why do you feel like later on in the series we're going to see Zeb treat Kallus with grace and mercy? When they get to that planet that you mentioned earlier on this episode, when we get to that planet and they're stranded together and Kallus is injured and there's this, Zeb has to help him and all this, you would think at this point in the series, see ya, dude, you're dead. I'm going to let you die. You ordered the genocide of my people. But then there's this grace that's extended. Why do you think that Zeb does that?
Well, I imagine that spending so much time with Kanan, he's a little bit of Jedi
Softy.
of Jedi philosophy is rubbed off on him. And now that Kanan is training Ezra, I'm certain Zeb's there for some of it. I think he is for a couple of lessons. I'm certain he's overheard
Oh yeah,
compassionate.
you become like the people that you're around. That's a big concept in life.
Right.
And so he's hanging out with Kanan, he's hanging out with Hera.
He's hanging out with Sabine, Ezra.
And that type of thing, which we haven't even got to Sabine, anything really with her yet.
No.
And that's a whole other fun storyline. But anyway, you're going to pick up on some of those things. So he's picking up on some of the Jedi elements.
So he realizes that while, he could kill him, that's not the right course of action. He needs to extend mercy and grace to him. Because ultimately it's going to work out better for everyone involved. He may not know specifically that, he doesn't know that Kallus is going to become Fulcrum, but he knows that showing that they're not the bad guys, the rebels aren't the bad guys that Kallus thinks they are, is going to overall help their cause.
It's awesome. Well, it's cool. It was a great episode, a lot of fun to watch, and to carry back in. That's one of the things I think we're going to find out a lot over the course of this podcast and YouTube show, is that as we go back and we revisit these Star Wars Rebels episodes, that things that we never would have thought about the first time we watched these episodes come back out. A perfect example of that being what's going to happen between Kallus, I did the same thing you do, between Kallus and between Zeb. And so we're excited about that. Now, next episode is going to talk more about Zeb. And we're going to talk about how Zeb doesn't like new people. We're going to move forward in that. But the big moment that sets that up is that moment we talked about earlier, where Ezra uses the Force for the first time to save Zeb's life. And that's what sets up the next episode, called Fight or Flight, which we'll talk about next week. So thank you guys so much for watching this and for listening to it on podcast. We certainly do appreciate that. Please subscribe to us on YouTube. Throw up a like. Put up a comment, question. Be a part of the show. Your comments, in the immortal words of Gary Vaynerchuk, your comments are our oxygen. So give us as much as you can on this. Support positive, family-friendly YouTube content. YouTube has sort of become. I didn't want to say that, but I'll say it. Cesspool for some sort of toxic Star Wars fandom, and we're part of this group of positive Star Wars YouTubers and podcasters that are trying to change that conversation. So we can't do it unless people know about it. So if you subscribe, share, like, comment, that makes a big deal about this. Make sure you tune in to our main podcast that comes out every Monday as we continue to talk about the latest in Star Wars news. And discuss some of the news and theories of the day. Make sure that you check out our Patreon page. We're going to throw up a video here where you can actually watch our welcome video at the end of this episode for Patreon. And we'd love for you to go over there. Consider giving us $1 a month support so you can get access to our Galactic Themes of Star Wars podcast exclusively for Patreon supporters. You can help us reach our first goal. When we reach our first sort of tier or goal on this, we're going to record a podcast, well, actually a YouTube video kind of commentary on the Darth Maul arc. All the Darth Maul episodes from Star Wars Rebels. Those are fun. And so we're going to get those up and running with that. And then, of course, we've got some swag out on Spread Shop, Star Wars Rebels Revisited shirts and hats and buttons and cups and mugs. And we even have dog bandanas. Yeah, you do that.
We need one of those for Buster.
For Buster. Sometime on this video we'll tell you the story about how Buster became Turtles. But anyway, that's it. I guess that's it for today. Anything else you guys want to say?
May the Force be with you.
May the Force be with you.